instead of having the influence of brothers and sisters. I grew up with just myself and my imagination. And if you're an only child, I know you can relate. You had your own bedroom, you never fought over toys, you enjoyed the full attention of your parents, which was a blessing and a curse depending on if you were getting in trouble. But that's what happened to me. That's how I grew up. And there was a hidden cost that followed me into adulthood, and it impacted kind of how I related to the world. Again, if you're an only child, you know what I'm talking about if you grew up without siblings, because the moment somebody tells you, oh, you're an only child, that explains a lot. That somehow never sounds like a compliment. It's a stigma almost to be an only child. It's not the worst stigma, but nonetheless, it is one. My name is Rico Armstrong. I am the author of the book, The Power of Pact and Attracting Authentic Relationships. And as an only child, I understand that there's a unique journey in forming connections that really energize you, that allows you to connect with people rather than having it drain you. And it's important to also establish certain boundaries that you don't have the practice to do with brothers and sisters. So this is the reason why this video is being made for you. As somebody who's been learning how to connect with people through public speaking since the age of 9 and having coached over 6,000 groups, I'm just now sharing these skills with you. And you can pick whatever ones will help you. Because what society often misunderstands about only children is this stereotype that because we didn't have to share our toys, we didn't have to share our bedroom and our space with siblings, that somehow we learn to be selfish or socially awkward, and this kind of follows us into adulthood. And again, that becomes the stereotype, and there's a reason stereotypes exist, but this one is not necessarily accurate. You know, without siblings as built-in social practice, we still had to learn how to connect with other people, but we had to do it in more high stakes environment. We couldn't just practice with our brothers and sisters at home. We couldn't go through those moments where we've had to fight with our brothers and sisters when we were little, and then learn, okay, maybe we shouldn't fight this way. It's not productive. We had to learn these things in the wild, in public, in high stakes environments. And we had to make our mistakes in public, not so much at home. It would be like swimming into or learning how to swim, and you just get thrown in the deep end rather than practicing in the kiddie pool first or getting used to just being in the water with floaties. No, we were just right in it. And the transition from being the center of attention at home to being among many in a social situation, it can make it a little bit, being the star of your own show to being an extra in somebody else's production or in somebody else's life. And nobody gave you the script. Now, what I've learned is that a lot of only children do work themselves out of this, but there's still some struggles along the way that we still might hold on to as an adult. So, for example, we can struggle with being a perfectionist, because if we're only practicing in high stakes situation, like if we don't get this connection right with people, then we're not going to have friends that we would like to have. And so we try to be perfect and how we come across to people, or we become perfect because we don't want to be misunderstood like we are even as adults, as being raised as only children. And what may also happen is we transform to match and fit other people and become a people pleaser. And we do that because we don't want to miss out on a connection, but yet if we don't know how to set our own emotional boundaries, we still feel alone sometimes. And yeah, it's tough sometimes. So it kind of leaves with a little bit of a dilemma. Is it possible to maintain the independence that you grew up with and the self-reliance that you grew up with and that we value, while also building healthy relationships that have healthy boundaries and then you're still connected with? Can you really build a relationship with people where you can be your truest self and it be good? I've had to live through this relationship myself. I found myself in a relationship with somebody who expected me to text them a lot and always keep up with them. And again, as somebody who grew up kind of independent, it's kind of weird because I longed for like a connection. Like I really wanted to be somebody who was into me, but also I needed my own space. It seems like they kind of conflict. And so this is one of the reasons why I developed the book, is because there's so many people who want to connect in relationships, but it can be a challenge. And we might try so many different ways to connect with people, but then when we feel like we're being misunderstood, or when we feel like our boundaries are not being met or being respected, and then therefore needs not being met, without a good framework to express yourself in a way that allows for connection and allows for those healthy boundaries. If we don't have a good framework for that, the relationship, it turns into chaos. So let me run through with you this framework that could help you in your relationships. It's called PACT, P-A-C-T. It's an acronym, and that helps us to make good agreements with the right people so we can be thriving in our relationships. The P stands for purpose. That's what fuels you every day. Like, what is something that is, you wake up every day and like, this is what life is for. All right. And if you can communicate that with your partner, it's going to help you be able to connect with the right people and also create those healthy boundaries. A is for authenticity. So these are the character traits and values that you really hold. These are the beliefs that you don't question. And when you can speak what you really believe and act in harmony with what you really value, that is we call authenticity. It's what we call being real. And there's a lot of people who maybe don't take enough time to actually write down, like, what do you really value as evidenced by how you lived your. The third one is the actual communication parts, using your body language and your words and your actions to express yourself, to express your purpose with authenticity, to express empathy, to express your curiosity of things. And the T stands for trust. And trust happens when we build a container for emotional safety and reliability. That's where the boundaries are. That's like, hey, inside this container, I can feel very vulnerable in sharing things with you. Inside of these boundaries, I feel like we can have a very healthy relationship. So again, purpose, authenticity, communication, trust. This is the framework, and it is particularly effective for those who may have grown up without siblings. Because again, siblings have the ability to be able to talk to each other and get immediate feedback on their communication and to get a lot of practice at home about what things really matter to them. They had to create and practice those boundaries at home when you're sharing space and ideas and resources with other people. But for an only child, it was a little bit difficult. Again, that's why this framework exists. And so it's really, really important to take this framework seriously in your relationships, because the Harvard study of adult development, which is an 80+ year study, has found that the quality of our relationships predicts your wealth and health and happiness more accurately than diet, exercise, or career. And for an only child, someone who was raised as an only child, this is especially significant. So here is a 3-step plan specifically for you as an only child to build authentic relationships that will energize you and not drain you, to build relationships where you can create those healthy boundaries and have a real connection with people. All right, so step number 1 is leverage your independence and your purpose. Again, growing up as an only child and growing up with just you and your imagination, if you really just stopped to examine what really got you excited, what really made you like extremely happy, you have the advantage because you weren't distracted by a house full of people who immediately were crushing your dreams or crushing something that you really enjoyed. And you can embrace that clarity of purpose that comes from having developed your identity without sibling comparison. All right, as an only child, you had the space to discover what truly matters with you without constant competition. I had a client once who was an only child, and they spent years trying to find their purpose by looking at what others were doing. Classic people pleaser. All right, but when I asked her, like, what would you do if no one noticed? And you could tell this was not a question that she really pondered before. And it was almost like she just stared into like this, oh my gosh, what would I do? So defining your values and your boundaries through the purpose that you understand with confidence is the first step. And I discuss how understanding your purpose will help you to see which relationships to keep and which ones to release. Because if we're people pleasing, but we're not getting back into something that's helping us serve our purpose, we might want to consider altering that relationship. And then when you find your purpose in step 1, We learn to articulate your purpose using this format. And this comes from Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. And you could convey or articulate your purpose with this sentence: my purpose is to blank so that blank. All right, now that's going to create clarity that attracts like-minded individuals. And when I share that purpose, I attract people who are more like that. And you, as an only child, can often have exceptional clarity about your interests because you have the space to explore them. Let's talk about step number 2. Transform only child communication patterns. Now, this is really, really important because the only way that we're going to really connect is not just by knowing what our purpose is, but in how we communicate. And as an only child, when we're only in high stakes situations, an idea of knowing exactly how to communicate to connect is crucial. So in communication, there are the 3 C's for the communication framework. It's lead with curiosity, speak and listen with clarity, and be courteous. This is what I call attractive communication. If you have these 3 elements, and this is the communication that makes you and the people you're talking to feel seen, heard, and validated. All right, so the first C being curiosity. It's about genuinely seeking to understand other people's perspectives. And so, as I mentioned in the book, if there's one thing that I hope you take away from the entire book, it is this point right here: lead with curiosity. And this is especially important as an only child. The good news, you probably grew up curious. Again, if it's just you and your imagination, you can imagine a lot of things. And all we have to do then is translate that to being curious about people. And the opposite of that is, if you've ever gone to work, one time there was a guy and he would always just dominate the meetings. We call him the Dave Show, because once he started, that was it. And he wasn't liked as well, even though he was a good enough guy, all because he was never curious. He just wanted to just share his thoughts, but never was curious about other people. So start with curiosity. Don't be like Dave. The second C is clarity, which ensures mutual understanding. Again, in the book, communication is defined as taking the word picture in your head. Your thoughts create a picture. Your thoughts create this picture, and we're going to take this picture and put it into somebody else's mind. And when we're both seeing the same picture, that is clarity. When we don't see the same picture, we have miscommunication. So clarity is very, very important. And this is where, as an only child, we may struggle the most because we don't have that practice to be clear at home. And so one effective clarity technique that I would love to do is labeling people's emotions, because sometimes when it's really easy to misunderstand or misinterpret what somebody's meaning or what somebody's feeling, if we just clarify what they are feeling, especially if they're telling you a story, you might say something like, it seems like you're frustrated, or it seems like you're really excited about this. And one of 2 things is going to happen. Either they're going to say, that's right. And they're going to feel that you really heard and that you really get them. Or they're going to say, that's not exactly right. And they're going to appreciate that you were trying to understand, and then they will clarify. So that is one little trick that you can use in order to really clearly understand what somebody's thinking or feeling, is to label their emotions. The third C is courtesy. And that involves speaking kindly without unnecessary offense. So this is really important because in a world where people are like, I'm just going to be my real authentic self, and then they don't give enough thought to how they are needlessly offending other people. And they're very blunt, and that gets celebrated on social media. Somebody who just tells it like it is. I'm just keeping it real, and it's like they're stating their own opinions or their own thoughts as if they were facts. And when somebody does that in a blunt way, I compare that to hot sauce. Some people enjoy the heat. Too much can be overwhelming. And at the end of the day, if we're not courteous, we are probably using language that shames and judges people, which kills connection. Fortunately for you, you probably don't have this problem, and you're probably already doing this. The real trick is just finding the right balance between your authenticity and making sure that what you say is said without judgment and shame. If you do that, you are applying that third C of courtesy. So these are the 3 C's that develop balance, warmth, and competence. This is what makes you more charismatic and magnetic, and you can really excel at these things as an only child. Let's talk about step number 3, and that's choosing your trust circle. All right. So once you identified your purpose, and once you use these skills to be able to communicate with other people, now you have the opportunity to create a trust system that honors your need for both connection and independence. And so in the book of Attracting Authentic Relationships, there's a concept introduced called the circle of trust. Now, this is the framework for understanding different relationship levels and the appropriate boundaries for each. Because maybe your closest circle, this is the people that know what keeps you up at night, your deepest fears, your highest highs and your lowest lows. All right. Not everybody belongs in that circle. All right. But you could have a circle that's just beyond that. And this is a circle where you have mutual interests, mutual goals, mutual shared values, where there's enough of those things where you're like, okay, I can be friends with you. I could hang out with you. We can work together. And I trust you to a certain extent. And then you have people where it's more superficial. And unfortunately, a lot of us stay in this like superficial range for fear of being hurt or not knowing how to progress the relationship into a deeper part of a trust circle. And so really the way you do that is by having set boundaries that you stick to. And when you are articulating your purpose and you are living your life in an authentic way, you are going to attract certain people that's going to click with you, and you will know it because they will support your purpose. You know, they're not going to ask you to betray your values. They're going to be reliable and show competence in their ability to support you and for them to do what they say. They're going to honor the boundaries that you set, and they're going to respect you. Now, for only children, developing these trust elements means you're going to have to be vulnerable. And this is, again, the hard part. When people have so many superficial relationships, it's going to require vulnerability. But I can tell you that if you've done the work, and it's not hard, it just takes a little bit of time to reflect, to understand your purpose and your authenticity. If you do that, it is more easy to be vulnerable with others. So those are the 3 steps, and let's just go over them again real quick. Step number 1, leverage your purpose and your independence. Step number 2, transform your communication patterns using the 3 C's. And step number 3, build and choose your chosen trust circle. All right. So this is a lot of information I know in this video. It's kind of long. So how can you apply all this in your relationship today? If you grew up as an only child and you want to build connections that honor your independence while creating meaningful bonds, here are 3 immediate actions you can take. You can go to attractandimpact.com. There is a free PACT strength assessment. You can take that assessment. It will help you identify your strengths and weaknesses throughout this framework, and then you can choose to start working on things from there. You can subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell for strategies tailored to attracting authentic relationships. And then the third thing you can do is get the book, The Power of PACT and Attracting Authentic Relationships. Do one or any of these 3 steps, and you will be helped to be able to connect with people and to be able to set healthy boundaries. And if you can imagine having a circle of real authentic friendships or relationships at work or at home where your independence is respected as a strength and not criticized as a flaw, where somebody's not looking at you and say, oh, you're an only child, that explains it, but they respect you more for what your experience is, where you can say, hey, I might need some space without someone saying, is that because you're an only child? If you can imagine having these real authentic relationships without being judged, wow, how would you feel? The only thing that's really holding you back besides having this proven framework is people pleasing. So if you can learn to shed the people pleasing part, establish this framework to get healthy boundaries, you will have advantages that no other people have who has not been practicing these things. Now, without adapting your approach, you might continue to feel misunderstood, while others are misinterpreting your independence as aloofness or selfishness. And you could risk missing out on the depth of connection. But being an only child gave you unique strengths. And with the right framework, these become your relationship superpowers, not your limitation. Your pact with yourself and with others starts today. So the next time someone says, you must be an only child, you can just smile and say yes. And I didn't have to share my inheritance either. And walk with your confidence and walk in your truth, and you'll be amazed at how much more attractive you will be to the right people.